So as we've seen, Nintendo has actually been going up with the Switch. It's actually been very, very well in terms of sales. But at one time, some of you may not have known, Microsoft tried to buy out Nintendo. And Nintendo laughed them out of the room. Good job, Nintendo. Never sell your child. Hey, what is going on, everybody? How are you all doing today? I hope you all are having a wonderful and fantastic day today. And if not, hopefully you all will have a better tomorrow. So this was an interesting story that I saw pop up recently about how at one time Microsoft tried to buy Nintendo, and Nintendo's response was they just laughed them out of the room. It was hilarious. This story is great. Thought we'd go over this a little bit and talk about why it's good to stay as an independent company rather than sell out. Because Nintendo had that patience, and look at how well they're doing currently. You know, they're doing pretty well with the Switch, gotta say, in comparison to Sony. So Microsoft tried to buy Nintendo, but got laughed out of the room. The company wanted Nintendo software for the original Xbox. This is by Engadget. Somehow, it's already been 2 decades since Microsoft first announced the Xbox, its foray into console gaming. Specifically, the Xbox was unveiled at CES in 2001. To commemorate that launch, Bloomberg has published an in-depth oral history of how the console came to be. It's a fascinating read, but one particular passage stands out. Details on Microsoft's efforts to secure games for the brand new console, while the company implored third-party developers to work on the Xbox. Microsoft also considered using its considerable financial might to buy developers, and Microsoft set its sights high, approaching Nintendo about acquisition. Oh yeah, here comes. Microsoft was laughed out of the room, says Kevin Backus, a director for third-party relations on the Xbox project. They just laughed their asses off, Backus said to Bloomberg. Like, imagine an hour of somebody just laughing at you. That was kind of how the meeting went. So basically, it was just like, oh, hey, well, Nintendo, we would like to, buy you out. And then Nintendo was just like, and just laughed him out the whole entire time. And see, Nintendo was smart on that, because they knew as an independent company, they knew to not get bought out. Because anytime that we see companies, which I've talked about multiple times, many people have talked about multiple times, that whenever you see a company buy out a lot of smaller companies, well, what happens? They basically just become a brand. That's it. You know, they lose their soul. They lose what they once were, and they're just a husk of what they originally were. And Nintendo must have known this. Otherwise, they would have let themselves go if they weren't aware of something like this happening. I mean, look, an example is cock dentures, because look at them. Look what they did. They sold out years ago. And look at how great they're doing. All right, they were dumb enough not to realize this. But, that's the thing, is that Nintendo seemed to definitely be aware of something like this. And if you look at the Switch, because, I mean, look at Nintendo in the past. Nintendo has typically been seen as that family-friendly console. You know, the one that you can buy for your kids. You know, everybody can just enjoy together. And that's kind of the way that it has been seen. But, as things have shifted over time, I mean, look at Nintendo now. I mean, gamers are now jumping ship to the Switch out of all the consoles, because the Nintendo Switch is actually the one that is actually not going to be like censor happy like Sony, for example, because Nintendo, they have a policy against that unless the developers want to censor their games, or they censor their first party games sometimes. But, when you look at it, Sony has become so censor happy, right? It's completely different from what they used to be as a company. And you look at them now, well, what is it they like to have? They like to cater to the Puritans and, make scenes with pro golfer Abby having a spicy scene, if you know what I mean. But 2D anime girl boobs, no, that's a problem to them. They can't stand that. It's terrible to them. And that's why when you look at Nintendo, because Nintendo's not censoring games unless it's just censoring their first-party titles, people are jumping to the Switch. I mean, this is why people are jumping to the Switch, because they know that they have the choice when it comes to games. And that what they're excited for is not going to be censored. I mean, if it's a first-party title, yeah, it probably will be. But, when it comes to, like, third-party, they're not going to go after it. They've made a new policy to where obviously the developers of the games can censor it or not. They can choose to. Microsoft's specific pitch did make some amount of sense. At the time, Nintendo was lagging behind Sony badly from a hardware perspective, so Microsoft figured it could take on hardcore production and leave Nintendo to focus on the software. We actually had Nintendo in our building in January 2000 to work through the details of a joint venture where we gave them all technical specs of the Xbox, said head of business development Bob McGreen. The pitch was their hardware sunk, and compared to Sony PlayStation, it did. So the idea was, listen, you're much better at the game portions of it with Mario and all that stuff. Why don't you let us take care of the hardware? But it didn't work out. Yeah, because they were laughed out of there. Oh man, Nintendo was smart on that, like I said. I gotta give them props. I mean, Nintendo has their problems. I'm not gonna sit here and deny they have their problems, but this was definitely something where they get praise. They definitely deserve praise for this. This was smart because any small company, if they were to just stick it out, they can make it. They can make it if they stick it out. They really can. They just have to be patient enough and work hard enough. And if they make good products, good quality products that people will enjoy and come back for more of, they can make it. They really can. While this is certainly the most notable of Microsoft's failed acquisitions, there were a few other notable developers who passed on the company's overtures. EA was the first company that Microsoft reached out to. The software giant passed with a more simple no thanks. Microsoft also was meeting with Square, now known as Square Enix, and Mortal Kombat developer Midway. One acquisition that did go through gave Microsoft what's been the flagship franchise for the Xbox since day one at the time, which was Bungie. Yeah, so we all know what happened with that because Bungie, and Microsoft, the whole split, and then of course you had Activision and all that. But just imagine if Nintendo actually did sell out, though. Man, that would have been terrible. And seeing how at that point you would have had the West actually dominate what Japan could do in terms of games, because had that been the case, Nintendo wouldn't have been able to be in control anymore because Microsoft would have had full control over them, and then Nintendo couldn't say what they could and couldn't censor. You know what I mean? Like, then again, I don't approve of censorship of any kind, but, that would have taken away everything because, you look at Nintendo now, I mean, look at since a Cyberpunk Ghost Story, they're not making Top Hat censor the game. Top Hat is not bending the knee either. I mean, of course, you have these game journalists who are jumping out there to try to make them censor it, which it's good to see that Nintendo and Top Hat are not bending the knee. They know what's going to reel them in money and they're not going to bend the knee, which is a good thing. And, if more companies would just learn to not sell out, to stay strong and independent, then, they could grow and be like Nintendo was, which Nintendo made a good decision. It's much better than what Warner Media's done, or Rooster Teeth, or Sony, because, well, what's happened to them? Well, they've been falling apart. And, you look at PlayStation, because this is a big point here. When PlayStation moved to California, it changed everything. They then started to try to push their Puritan ways, change up their policies, start going censor happy. I mean, it's not good. And you look at PlayStation over in Japan, well, it's falling apart. I mean, and that's where it came from, was Japan. And then it comes over to California. And then once it comes into California, which is the snake's den, because, you have Hollywood and everything. Well, yeah, it all falls apart. I mean, and it's in decline, which is embarrassing that it's in decline in its own home country. That is embarrassing for a console that, is basically having what looks like the Microsoft situation with the Xbox One now. I mean, it's absolutely embarrassing. And, it seems like the PS5 is going to sell less than half of what the PS4 is, from what analysts believe. I mean, this is how bad it is. And, if PlayStation had just stayed in Japan, this wouldn't have been an issue. These changes wouldn't have happened. But, what is it that they're doing now? They're catering to Puritans. They're making your pro golfer Abby characters, which, oh, God, that. Ugh. And, that's what I mean. Like, you see what they're trying to do? They're trying to push their, agendas onto gamers, which people can't stand. Now, of course, while it's doing well here in the States, like I said, it's just an embarrassment that it can't even do well in its own home country. I mean, that's pathetic. It really is. And, If a company decides to sell out, well, then they lose a part of who they are, what they were before. They don't get to be that company that gets to do whatever they want anymore. They have a higher up telling them what to do. It's like they've lost a part of their own soul. They, are just nothing more than a cog in the machine at that point. And, well, it comes back to hit them hard when you think about it. But when you look at Nintendo, Nintendo pulled the right move, I think, by not selling out here because by staying independent, they're able to do what they want. If they had sold out to Microsoft, they would be just like Sony at this point. They wouldn't have any control over what they'd want to do, and they'd just be another cog in the machine. That's all they'd be. They would just be another piece to make the machine go. So Nintendo ultimately, I think, pulled the right move by not selling out, and now they're able to still do what they want to do, however they want to do it. But anyways, I'll be back again on Tuesday. Let me know what you think about this entire situation down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new here, and make sure you are still subscribed, because YouTube is unsubscribing people from all their favorite channels, so make sure you are still subscribed to all your favorite channels. Hit the video with a like, and also be sure to share the video on social media. Spread the word and get it out there. It's greatly appreciated, and it really helps out the channel a lot. Also, be sure to follow me on Discord. We have a wonderful community there. Not only that, but it will keep you up to date on when the newest videos will be released, as well as any other upcoming events in the near future. So be sure to follow me on Discord. The link is in the description down below. But anyways, I hope you all have yourselves a wonderful and fantastic day today. And remember, if today was not a good day, tomorrow could always be better. Take care of yourselves and everyone around you. And have yourselves a good one out there, everybody.